Hello, my name is Lilian Okibe. Welcome to my channel. So in today's video, we're going to be talking all about brushing locks. I'll be telling you guys the advantages, the disadvantages, and helping you figure out whether it's a good idea for you to brush your locks. So if that sounds like something that you're interested in, then please keep on watching. The first thing we're going to be talking about are the advantages, or like the things that the benefits that you can get from brushing your locks. Now, the first advantage is brushing your locks can help to reduce frizz, and I feel like this is one of the major reasons why people who brush their locks do it, because when you brush your locks, it reduces the appearance of frizz, and so your hair or your locks are not going to be as frizzy, they're not going to look as frizzy. Another thing is brushing locks can help to remove lint. So depending on the kind of brush you're using and whether, like, if the lint is like on the surface of the locks, when you brush it, it can actually help to remove lint, and that can prevent lint buildup in the long run. Another advantage of brushing locks is that brushing your roots can help to reduce how much marring or like how much tangling that can happen at your roots. Another benefit of brushing your locks is like when you brush your locks, it can actually help to distribute your products. So if you're someone who applies products in their locks, brushing all the products in can help to distribute it all over your locks, so that you don't have like blobs and like chunks of products sitting on just one spot of the hair. So when you brush your locks, it can actually help to distribute your product, kind of like what happens when you comb like loose natural hair. Now, those are the major advantages of brushing locks. Now let's go ahead and talk about the disadvantages of brushing locks. Now, the first disadvantage of brushing locks is that depending on the kind of brush that you're using, it can actually cause breakage, or like it can snag some hair strands from your hair, especially if you're someone who has, if your hair is not like fully mature yet, or even if it's mature but if you have a lot of like frizz and like loose, you know, hair strands on the surface of your locks. If your hair is like really frizzy, brushing the locks, especially if it's not like with a super soft brush, it can actually break hair strands from your locks. Another thing is brushing your locks can actually change the texture of your frizz. You guys know that I mentioned earlier that brushing your locks can help to reduce frizz. Now, how this happens is that when you brush your locks, it kind of like helps to elongate your hair strands, and so they lay flatter on the lock, like the loose hair strands basically that cause frizz. When you go ahead and brush your locks, it actually helps those hair strands to lay flat on the lock, and that changes the texture of your frizz. And so normally, if you come close, if you see people who brush their locks, people who have naturally very frizzy locks, frizzy hair basically, of like frizzy locks, if they brush their locks, if you brush your locks, you're going to notice that your frizz becomes elongated, and so your frizz becomes straight as opposed to being like coily, you know, depending on what your curl pattern is, right? So that's another. This can be a disadvantage to some people, and it can actually be an advantage to other people. But just know that what comes with reducing of frizz is that it elongates like your hair strands, the frizzy hair strands, it elongates it, and so it lays flatter, and that changes the texture of the surface of your locks. Another thing is, if you're someone who likes to brush their edges, it can actually result in snagging of hair strands and uprooting of hair strands, and that can, if you're someone who naturally has, you know, fragile edges, this can cause like hair loss around your edges. Now, another disadvantage of brushing your locks is that it can introduce lice and lint into your locks. I have a video on my channel where I talked about lice and like the fact that now that you have locks, because like now when you have natural hair, basically, because you're not using all these like chemicals and all the likes, you are more prone to having lice, you know. And so if you're someone who shares your brushes, or like you leave your brushes lying around, you know, without paying much attention to it, those brushes can actually, you know, insects, it's not even just lice basically, but like insects and different things can get into the brushes, because like brushes especially when you don't clean them often, you know, many of them, especially when you're using brushes that are dark, you know, you can have like insects, you know, hiding in there if you're not careful. Or even lint, sometimes you can have lint, sometimes lints that you may have removed previously, it can actually be in the lock, and so in the brush rather. So as you go ahead and rebrush your locks, you're thinking that you're removing lint or you're removing stuff, but you're actually introducing lice and like lints back into your locks. Another disadvantage of brushing your locks is that, yes, I mentioned earlier that brushing your locks can help to remove lint when the lint is on the surface of the locks, but it also depends on the kind of brush that you're using. Sometimes if the brush is not like, if it's super, I'm going to be talking more about this later on in this video, but just know that like depending on the kind of brush that you use, brushing your locks can actually make the lint that is on the surface of your locks become more embedded in the locks, depending on how you're brushing and like the state of your hair when you're brushing, you know. So it's like it can help to remove or prevent lint buildup, but it can also contribute to you having lint and having lint buildup, basically, depending on how you use it. So now I know many people often ask me, do I brush my locks? And the answer to that is no, I do not brush my locks. Now let's go ahead and let me list all the reasons why I feel that way. Now the first reason why I do not use brushes in my locks is because, like I said, one of the disadvantages of using brushes is that it kind of like changes the texture of your locks on the surface. Because when you brush your locks, what happens is it helps to elongate the strands of your hair that are causing the frizz, right? And like for me now, for my locks are I always say on my channel, frizz is not a bad thing. I don't see frizz as a bad thing. I feel like frizz, I like my frizz. I feel like the frizz contributes to the volume in a way that I have. And so it's not my intention to eliminate frizz. That's one reason. Another reason is when you brush your locks, I notice that it elongates the frizz. And so normally my frizz is circular. My frizz has this like coily circular texture, right? And so brushing the locks is going to elongate that texture. And I like that texture because I feel like it gives my hair a little bit of oomph. You know, I feel like my locks now feel very soft. Like the individual locks are firm, you know. They're not like super hard, but they are firm. But because of the frizz that I have on the surface of all my locks, like when I touch my locks, it feels swooshy, you know. And I also think like I said earlier, I also think that the frizz contributes to the volume. So I do not want to get rid of my frizz. I just want to allow it to be there. Like if it finally goes eventually as my locks get older, fine. But for now, I have frizz and I like that I have frizz. So that's one reason why I do not use brushes. Now the second reason why I do not use brushes in my locks is because I do not just like when you brush your locks, you tend to lose a few hair strands like every time you brush your locks, right? And because my hair is very frizzy, like my locks are frizzy, I have so many like frizzy strands on the surface of my locks. And so I find that if I always go ahead to brush, from time to time I'm going to be breaking some of those frizz and hair strands that are causing frizz on the surface, and I do not want that, you know. So that's another reason why I personally do not brush my locks. Another reason why I choose not to brush my locks is that the kind of brush that I'll be comfortable enough to use in my locks will be very soft. And the thing about using brushes that are super soft is that it kind of defeats the process. Like you want to use you don't want to use like super hard bristle brush, but at the same time you want brush that is kind of firm. Now the kind of brush that I'm going to be comfortable enough to use in my locks that will not break any hair strands whatsoever, or like break very minimal hair strands whatsoever due to the nature of my hair, the kind of brush that I'm going to be comfortable enough to use will basically not be doing anything to my hair. Like when it comes to lint, it is not going to be enough. It's not going to be like firm enough or like strong enough to remove lint from my hair. And so I'm going to find out that I'm brushing my locks, but I'm just burying the lint even more in my hair because the brush is so soft. So for me personally, if I do that, that will not make sense, you know. And so that's why I choose not to brush my locks altogether. Now however, I feel like brushes are nice. I've seen so many people who use brushes to their advantage, and I feel like if you have a nice routine and if you follow some tips, you can actually use brushes to your advantage and eliminate almost completely all the disadvantages that I mentioned. So let's go ahead and talk about tips that you should bear in mind if you want to use brushes successfully. Now the first thing is you have to pay attention to the kind of brush that you get. When picking brush that you want to use for your locks, I feel like you should not pick brushes that are super hard. You know, all those brushes that are so hard that you can use to scrub floors. That's too hard. You don't want to use something that is that hard. So you want to pick a soft bristle brush. However, I feel like you should pick soft bristle brush generally. Like they should not be super hard, but at the same time I feel like you should have both the like super soft brushes and those ones that are a little bit more firm. They're not like hard. Like if you brush your skin, like As a general rule of thumb, I feel like if you take your brush and you brush your skin, you should not feel any pain. Like, you should not feel any pain whatsoever. That's something that you used to know that, okay, this brush is good enough that I can use in my locks. You should not feel any pain whatsoever. Like this brush now is super soft, even though I can feel that something is brushing over my skin, but it's not painful at all, and it's not like causing any marks whatsoever. So that's the kind of brush you want to bear in mind. But at the same time, I feel like it is nice for you to have something that is very soft and something that is a little bit more firm, because I feel like both brushes can work for different reasons. For example, if the main reason why you're brushing your locks is because you want to remove frizz, right? You want to get something that is more on the soft side, right? You want to get something that is more on the soft side. And when you brush your locks, it's better for you to brush your locks when your locks are kind of damp. I feel like that's going to give you the best results without damaging your locks. Now, if the main reason why you are brushing your locks is to remove lint, I feel like you want to get something that is more firm. It should not be super hard, but it should be a little bit more firm. Like, it should not be so soft, like super soft, because I noticed that when you use brushes that are very soft, they really do not do anything, like when it comes to removing lint, because they are not strong enough to brush out the lint, right? So it's better for you to get something that is more firm but not super hard, that is going to break your hair, right? But something that is more firm. And I feel like if you're trying to remove lint from your locks, it is better for you. You're going to get better results, and it's going to be more efficient when you do it on dry locks. And that's why I feel like when it comes to brushing locks to remove lint, it works better for locks that are very mature, locks that already do not have any frizz. Because when you brush locks that do not have any frizz, because you don't have loose strands or so many loose strands on the surface of the locks, your chances of ripping out hair strands is very low. And so if you're brushing locks that are super mature with a brush that is a little bit more firm, you can successfully use that brush to remove lint that is on the surface of the locks without snagging your hair in any way. Now, another thing you want to bear in mind when using brushes in your locks is you want to try as much as you can to avoid brushing your roots, because your roots are loose hair, and if at all you want to brush your roots, make sure you use something that is very soft, super soft. The only place where you're allowed to use brushes that are kind of firm is on the length of your locks, and that's if your locks are already frizzless to begin with, because that's the only time when you're not going to have any hair strands break off as a result of your brushing. Another thing is, if you're brushing your locks because you want to distribute your products, it's better for you to do it on wet or damp hair, and you should use something that is very soft, because that's going to give you better results. Another thing you want to bear in mind when you're using brushes in your locks is you want to treat your brushes with care. You want to wash your brushes as often as you wash your own hair, or even if you can do it more often, right? You don't want to just leave your brushes lying around anyhow, because if you do that, that can cause problems for you down the line. It can introduce lint and lice and insects and other nasty things into your hair, into your locks. So treat your brushes with caution. Do not share your brushes. Do not share your brushes. Do not share your brushes. Remember what they taught you in elementary school about personal hygiene. Things like combs and brushes should not be shared. When we had loose natural hair, we used to do that and get away with it. But now that you have locks, because if lice gets into your hair, it's more complicated to get out, because your hair is natural and you do not use chemicals, so before it gets out, you're going to see it's going to cause you some trouble, right? So the best thing is for you to prevent it in the first place. So do not share your brushes, and make sure that you take good care of your brushes. Wash them, keep them clean. If you can, it's better for you to pick a brush that has light colored bristles, so that if there's anything inside the brush, you can see it, unlike something like this. So those are all the tips I have to share with you guys. I hope you guys learned one or two things. If you did, don't forget to give this video a thumbs up. If you like to see more videos from me, then definitely subscribe. If you like to learn how to have locks that look like this, I have an online course where I teach all the tips and tricks. I'll put all the link down in the description box if you're interested. Thank you so much for watching. See you guys in my next video.